Hey all, welcome to the Institute and this week's favorite collection. Today we're going to be looking at one of my favorite sections, the Brown section. It is the military and Western section. It will also have some historical figures appropriate for that kind of theme. It's down over here in the middle. It's actually one of the smaller wall sections. It's only about 12 foot of wall, as you can see along here. And the better part of a couple of towers in front. So let's start with the wall. We're going to start up on top with some quarter scale figures. We'll zoom in here. These are some of my favorite sideshow quarter scale figures. Those two there, that's Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp. They did a fantastic job with that pair. And of course, to the right there is a Johnny Depp quarter scale figure from NECA. But those two are amazing. I wish we would get a good Tombstone version, but those are based on the realistic looks of both of those characters. As we move down the top shelf, you can see this is another one of those top shelves where I've split it in half with a riser so that I get two sets of 6-scale figures across the top. And this set across here is going to be a mixture of military and fire and police and ancient warriors. That's an EMT there. Military from different periods. You saw an RCMP a minute ago. There's a duck hunter. There's Napoleon. We'll come down one and we get some weird stuff here with the dogs. There's a fisherman. So these are some really unusual figures. Some more firefighters, because you know those are always cool from different periods. Back about 20 to 25 years ago, before we got a lot of the boom in licensed 6-scale figures, everybody and his brother was doing a variety of military figures. That's kind of where you see these all coming from. Many of them had real metal parts, very popular. So that's that double set up there. On the next shelf down, we have a line from Mattel. They remember, all you obviously remember Big Jim. Well, over in Europe, Big Jim had a version called Carl May. Here are the figures for that series. And then there's a whole bunch of these outfits. These are all carded outfits. There's some Lone Ranger outfits in back. All of the Carl May ones here in front. Lone Ranger in back. This is all a great example of some of the 1970s Western figures. You're going to see here's the Sundown Kid from the Ready Gang. You're going to see that whole series in a minute. And more of the Lone Ranger stuff. Now, if you like the Gabriel Lone Ranger line, there is a video around that I did of my entire series of those. Next shelf down, another great series from the 60s. This is the Mark's Best of the West. Some of these, like Eric the Viking there, and both the Silver Knight, his horse, and the Gold Knight and his horse, were my actual toys as a kid. I loved this line way more than G.I. Joe. You'll see some Joes too, but my Best of the West figures were my favorite thing when I was a kid. They could hold up to almost any kind of play. Here we get down into the Johnny West family of figures. There's his sons and daughters. Here's Johnny in one of his versions. And a couple more Johnnies in some different versions. And Jane in back with some more variants on the kids. Mike Hazard the Spy there in front. Next shelf down, we're going to be talking about some military figures and some Western figures that are from movies. These aren't historical characters. These are actual movie characters from different shows. And then we got to have Rambo there. Here we have this sideshow, 3 of the sideshow platoon figures. You're going to see the rest of them in a minute. And then, of course, the much improved Hot Toys versions. However, you see there's 3 sideshow figures and 2 Hot Toys. There are 3 or 4 more platoon figures that Sideshow did They always went deep with their figures, something that Hot Toys never does. Little James Dean and Marilyn Monroe action there. Inglourious Bastards. Steve McQueen in a couple of different ways from The Great Escape. Oh, as we move down this way, we get into some really oddball stuff, including Hogan's Heroes. Another Steve McQueen. One there in front, that's Hot Toys. They're Johnny Depp of theirs doing as Tonto. We finish up down here with an excellent Antonio Banderas Zorro. On the shelf below, we have some more vintage stuff. That's one thing you're going to see a lot of. When we talk Western and military, I picked up a lot of the vintage figures. These 6-scale figures here are all from the Lewis and Clark expedition. More vintage, some of it European. The European market loved Western figures, especially in the 60s and 70s. Those G.I. Joes in back were from about 15 years ago. They were an interesting reissue they did. And then down on the floor we have a few items like a motorcycle. Let's see, we got the G.I. Joe foot locker from when I was a kid. One of the 300 figures. The cool Lone Ranger stable. As well as the Ready Gang playset in the full-size box. There's another fisherman there sitting in front of him. He's just ended up there because I was moving some stuff around. I've got to find a new home for him. So, that's the wall of the brown section. Now in front of the brown section, we have some towers. As I mentioned, here are the other 4 platoon figures that Sideshow did. Still boxed. They did a really nice job with these. And then down below, we get into some more of the smaller Lone Ranger Gabriel figures. These are the ones that are the 4-inch stuff. Matches up with the Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid figures and the Zorro figures. All carded. Next shelf down, we've got some terrific 300 figures. And I'm going to count the Doc Brown. These are from Back to the Future 3, which is Western, so those two certainly count. We got some other Back to the Future here as well, but that's more science fiction, and we'll talk about those again when we get to science fiction. More of the Gabriel Lone Ranger cloth figures that were in the 9-inch scale. If you really love this line, that El Lobo carded is a hard one to get. If you really love this line, I also have another video showing all of my Lone Ranger collection. And on the bottom shelf here, we have some weird stuff. One of the things I liked about Western figures was all the cheap, bizarre, wild knockoff stuff you could get. You can see some of it on this shelf. Back in the 70s and into the 80s, they loved to do this kind of stuff. Over here on the bottom shelf, we have some more foreign things. And some other oddball carded figures, including a 6-scale camping set and a great Davy Crockett doll. Let's not forget those Legends of the West. Again, if you want to see a video on those, I also have a favorite collection video covering all the Legends of the West figures from Empire and Excel. Here are some of them. Let's actually go down around the bottom since I want to talk about those a little bit more and I don't want to lose that thread there on that shelf. Down here we have some of these. These are hard PVC figures. A couple of different companies did these. They are under a couple of different labels, including American Legends and Legends of the West. And there's a whole ton of different characters. I've got almost all of them, I think. And I just picked them up by accident. They weren't actually something I was trying to buy. Sort of the same down around this side. We've got some of these Legends of the Wild West. These are kind of cheesy 80s and 90s figures. I didn't really mean to get all of them, but I think I've got the entire collection now. And then there's that cool Zorro mini bust there. I mentioned the Mark's Ready Gang. Here's that complete set, the 3 characters, all 3 horses with one of them boxed. If you watched the HBO show, here we have the figures based on the Westworld. Diamond selected those. Fighting Furies was from Matchbox. I just picked up the ones that were directly related to Western stuff because, you know, I was into that whole Western thing, and I wanted to get this shelf. Didn't want to lose off this track here. This is a lot of the rest of the Legends of the West by Excel in the 9-inch scale. And then we get into some of the Hateful Eight, which is a great line from NECA. Here in front, this is the Stuntman set with Hal Needham. Those of you into the Fall Guy and Stuntman type stuff. And then there's some horses from Bonanza. I don't have any of the Bonanza figures. That's one of those things I want to pick up one of these days. So let's jump up to the next shelf and talk about the Civil War. Mixed in here, we have both Union and Confederate soldiers in battle. We have General Grant kicking General Lee's ass, so much so that he's smoking a cigar while he's doing it. The brick wall there was from Sideshow. They put that together. They did a whole terrific line. I only picked up a few of the soldiers. However, here we have Billy the Kid and another version of Wyatt Earp that they did in the 6 scale. The General Custer there in back. This is the one that was done by, their name will come to me here in a minute. Drastic Plastic did that, General Custer. And this is a prototype head. This is an alternate sculpt they were thinking about doing. It's one of my prototype pieces. Abraham Lincoln is in back watching them all battle it out. So we come around this side, we get some funky military figures. Both villains and good guys, including some SWAT truck running over one of the villains there. Well, let's see, we'll come around this side and finish that shelf off with one of the SWAT guys getting ready to throw somebody in the back of the truck. So let's talk about what we missed up there on that top shelf. We talked about this other side where the platoon figures were. On this side, if you like that, again, Legends of the West, you see some of the boxed figures up there at top. And the vehicles, if you wanted to see something a little bit more complete, again, there's a whole nother video there. Some Lone Ranger stuff. Captain Action, the one that's in the center there, that's an actual original 1960s outfit. This is the Sideshow Custer, a little bit different than the one you saw earlier. And we get some Hateful Eight 6 scale figures, including a playset for them. They only did the 3. Asmus did these. They did a terrific job on all 3 of them. Tank, along with some more World War II figures, both American and German. See that German on the front there is getting run over. And some silly G.I. Joe figures of Teddy Roosevelt and John F. Kennedy with some open space up there that I haven't used yet. Down on that second shelf, we have some more World War II stuff. Just like the Civil War, we've got a bunch of the Sideshow figures, American, German, and Japanese, all battling it out here on this shelf. And as we come around down this way, we get George Washington standing between a Brit and a Reb. The red and the blue. And we finish off with some G.I. Joe and some Drastic Plastic. That Franklin Delano Roosevelt there was by Drastic Plastic. They didn't do too many figures, but all the figures they did were really nice. Over on this side, we have an excellent Zorro, along with some knockoff Lone Ranger stuff. They used the Gabriel molds to do some of this stuff from the Best of the West line later in the 80s and 90s. So let's move down a shelf over here. Oops, let's move up over here. Almost forgot about these, didn't come all the way across. There's the Mego line, Western line in back. Some of the boxes. Got the Plan B Toys stuff here in front. They did a whole World War II military line. And in the middle, we've got some of the carded Little Legends of the West, also by Excel. Some McFarlane figures in back, military. Now we'll come down, talk about the rest of the Lone Rangers set from Gabriel. These are the cloth figures, cloth-clothed figures. It's from the 1970s, and the play sets that you see them in were European releases. I love that Prospector play set there. And we will finish off this by looking at this bottom shelf, which contains the Little Legends of the West play sets and figures all loose. Again, if you're really into that stuff, make sure you check out the video that you can find in my set of videos dedicated to that. So there you go. That's the tower in front. Military figures. You'll notice some RoboCop here. We'll talk about all of that when we get to the science fiction discussion. Military, historical, Western, that's all in this section. This is the brown section. I have a few more things to pick up in the Lone Ranger series. I'm pretty much complete on the Carl May series. As you know, I like to complete stuff as much as possible. And this is where there's a lot of vintage stuff. A lot of the stuff you've seen here in this section, 60s and 70s. Some of it rolling into the 2000s. So, until Friday, when I do another collection acquisition report, I hope you have a great week. Make sure you subscribe and have a good one.